Rich was getting ready to open a new coffee shop in Mission Bay, San Francisco, when he heard his baker screaming for help. Someone was stealing her car, which was parked outside. Dropping everything he was holding, Rich jumped into his Tesla Model Y and took off in the direction the baker told him the thief had gone. It was early in the morning, so there wasn't a lot of traffic at the time. Rich was just guessing at which way the thief had gone. He was about to give up as he approached a traffic light about to turn red, but that's when he saw his baker's Honda in the distance. After checking for traffic, he blew through the red light and hit the juice pedal to catch up to the thief.
911, what's your emergency?
Rich called 911 to report that he was chasing the stolen car and that he had the thief in sight. The 911 operator advised him that what he was doing was highly dangerous and recommended that he back off. He replied, "Can't do that, ma'am." The thief stopped at a red light and Rich slowly crept up behind them. That's when the thief ran the red light and started to pick up speed. Rich was afraid the thief might have recognized his Tesla since it had been parked next to the Honda they'd stolen right outside of the coffee shop. But then the thief stopped normally at the next red light. Maybe Rich's cover hadn't been blown after all. He was still connected with the 911 operator and they again recommended that he back off, but they did tell him they were dispatching units. That's when the thief made an illegal U-turn and Rich realized that the perpetrator had noticed him after all. Rich continued to follow them. He knew that what he was doing was dangerous, but he decided he'd had enough of the rampant crime in his city. He wanted to actually do something about it. At this point, he also felt like he couldn't back off now, not with police on the way and the thief still in sight.
There's a 15-minute ETS of 0021.
The car thief started running multiple red lights and swerving around traffic. Rich kept his distance, deciding to keep following at a slower, more controlled speed. Suddenly, the thief stopped in a bike lane and shut off the car. Rich stopped a couple of car lengths back and wondered, what's happening now? Am I going to get shot at? At first, the thief walked slowly down the road before darting toward an apartment building across the street. Rich slowly followed her in his Tesla, still on the phone with the police. The police urged him to stay back, but to keep a close eye on her. After swinging around the block, Rich saw her walking up a sidewalk, probably thinking that she'd lost him. Points to the Tesla for being so silent, right? Then she ran across the street. He continued to follow her from a distance, and just as he crept up to the intersection, one of the police cruisers that was looking for him went flying by. Rich waved his arms out the window to get their attention. The driver of the cop car slammed on the brakes, and Rich pointed to the thief and said, "That's her." Rich says what happened next felt like an episode of Cops, or maybe an episode of Wham Baam Teslacam. One of the officers jumped out of the cop car and took off after the thief on foot.
Suspect is in custody.
Rich confesses that following the thief wasn't the safest thing for him to do, but he's glad that his baker got her car back and he'd do it again. The police thanked him for what he'd done. What an epic example of teamwork. Thanks for sharing your story, Rich. Be sure to check out Rich's coffee shop, Spro Coffee Lab, if you're ever in San Francisco. They have great coffee, not to mention the guy who will keep an eye on your car.